PlayMakers Media Lab.
Hello, PlayMakers Media Lab. My name is Jackie Ormes, and I am known as the first Black woman cartoonist. I was born in Pittsburgh, and I moved to Chicago later in life, where I became a part of the social elite. Fancy, right? Now, why am I talking to you all today? Well, it's Black History Month. And for all of Black History Month, Playmakers Media Lab is bringing you content highlighting the Chicago Black Renaissance and the iconic Chicago authors that flourished during this time. The Chicago Black Renaissance was a creative movement that blossomed out of Chicago's South Side during the 1930s and 1940s. This was after the Great Migration, and many of the giants hailing out of the Chicago Black Renaissance were born in the southern part of the US and later came to not only call Chicago home, but truly created community here. The Chicago Black Renaissance was instrumental to the culture we live every day as Chicago residents. One of the members of the Chicago Black Renaissance was me, Jackie Ormes, and that is due to my iconic cartoons. Similar to how you might see cartoons today, like Calvin and Hobbes or the comic books of all the Marvel characters, I was creating comics that were released only a few strips at a time in the newspaper every week back in the 1930s and 1940s. In 1937, I created the comic strip character Torchy Brown in the series Dixie to Harlem, about a teenager from Mississippi who travels to Harlem to perform at the Cotton Club. The comic strip was full of action, adventure, comedy, and even some political and personal commentary that highlighted the struggles that many Black people were facing at the time. In 1942, I moved to Chicago to start to write for the Black newspaper, the Chicago Defender. And after a little while, they started publishing a comic strip of mine called Candy, about a wisecracking and smart housemaid. Later, I created a comic strip called Patty Joe and Ginger, about two sisters named, well, Patty Joe and Ginger. It was so popular, it ran for 11 years, and we even released a Patty Joe doll. Now that I've told you some of the amazing work I've done as a cartoonist, now it's your turn to try to make a cartoon of your own. First, grab a piece of paper and something to write with. I recommend a pencil because sometimes it helps to be able to erase, especially when drawing. Now, if you have your pencil, draw 3 squares onto a piece of paper. And this will be the beginning, the middle, and the end of your comic strip. Now, decide what your character and setting are going to be. For instance, my character is going to be an octopus named Frank that wants to go shoe shopping. And my setting will be the mall. The next step is to decide what conflict takes place for that character and setting, and then how the story is resolved. For instance, if Frank the octopus is outside the shoe store in the mall in the first square, maybe in the second square, that is where our conflict will take place. And I've decided the conflict of my comic strip is that none of the shoes fit Frank. So in the second square, I would draw that conflict, which might look like an octopus with a ton of different shoes on his tentacles. And in the third square, draw the resolution for how the story ends. For my story, I could draw Frank deciding he doesn't need shoes after all. Maybe he decides to buy a dress instead. So once you've drawn your story out, you can add what the characters say at the bottom of each square. And that's your activity. Take a few minutes and do the activity on your own. And if you get stuck, just remember, every idea is a good idea. Thanks for joining me on Playmakers Media Lab. Remember to tune in every Monday at 12:30 Central for brand new creative writing activities. And tune in on patreon.com/Playmakers Laboratory tonight at 8 p.m. Central for an all-new version of That's Weird Grandma, where we adapt all student-written stories that are delightful and fun. Thanks for tuning into Playmakers Media Lab. See you next week.
PlayMakers Media Lab.